Cool. Ben, great to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
My pleasure. It's an honor to appear on your show.
Thank you. So let's get into it. And to begin with, I want to know one of the global events that we all went through in the last 4.5, 5 years was the pandemic. It
Yes.
shifted and did so many things to all of us. How much of living through that time period has influenced and affected the way that you live and do business now?
Well, look, I think it's influenced it for everybody. I mean, we're on this global Zoom, and certainly that was a thing beforehand. But just the distances have got a lot shorter, and we're able to sort of connect with like-minded folks across the globe, across the country, and for business relationships, it's just as much as that was a hard time and a challenge, I think it's really brought a lot of positives.
So let's get into exactly what you do for a living on a daily basis as a back pain recovery specialist. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day. And one of the
Okay.
kids in the back of the room is curious and he's like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I help people reduce tension in their back and their neck with something called Alexander technique, which is a proven way of just reducing tension. And look, a lot of back pain comes down to the way that you hold yourself and the way that you habitually tense the muscles in your neck and back. Now, obviously, seek medical advice, listen to your doctor. But there's a lot of cases where there's no obvious cause for back pain, but people are still in terrible pain. And what we find is we can reduce a lot of those symptoms by using this thing called Alexander technique, which just allows you to, stop, doing to yourself what may be troubling you.
I had a good friend in high school that had back pain in his 20s, and it was horrible. I mean, just you don't think about certain parts on your body if they don't work correctly, how much it can affect you in the back. It's such a huge part of our existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can really relate to that story because I myself had, horrible back, neck, shoulder pain in my early 20s, like 21, 22. And it was, I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know why it was happening to me. I felt like I was, I felt like I was a healthy person. Like I wanted to be a healthy person. I wanted to feel like a healthy person, but this stuff was happening to me, and it really, I didn't really know why, whether I had some like psychological problem or some injury that I didn't know about. It was very confusing and stressful. And add to that the near constant tension headaches. And I really feel for anyone who is going through that because for me, it was a fairly challenging time.
So, what did you want to be when you were in the third grade, when you were a kid? What was your dream life?
Well, my old man, my father was a fighter pilot, as it happens. So I sort of thought that was pretty cool. My mum wanted me to be a lawyer. But yeah, I used to, I grew up on Air Force bases on and off, and I used to see my dad rocketing overhead in a fighter jet, and I thought that was pretty cool. Then in year 11, in the 11th grade, I went and saw just a routine checkup with an eye doctor, or whatever they're called, optometrist, ophthalmo, I don't know. Anyway, they said to me, you have like one part of your eyes in the wrong shape, and you might not have 20/20 vision. And then that kind of blew that for me. So, I ended up studying engineering at
Wow.
the Australian National University, and I got right into that.
Wow. So, how did you evolve into this career of helping people with their back issues? How did that happen?
Well, I think first of all, conventional medical treatment is always the first option, and it's a responsible thing. I found that in my own personal cases, doctors weren't really able to help me, nor were chiropractors, massage therapists. I tried yoga and meditation, acupuncture, all this sort of stuff. One massage therapist told me I was the tensest person she'd ever laid hands on, which was a bit of a blow. I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I discovered this thing called the Alexander technique, which I went on to study, and I'm a registered teacher of now. And over the intervening years, I tried a bunch of stuff, and that really was the difference that made the difference. And um, so I had a career in IT, and I kind of stepped away from that at one point and just said, look, what I really want to do is help other people um, experience the transformation that I've had. Uh, and it's not the right thing for everyone. It doesn't work for everyone, but it certainly works for a lot of people. And the results can be, pretty startling, actually.
Yeah. So who's been that inspirational force, that hero for you in your life?
Oh, well, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is my dad. He's a very capable man, a career in the military, but he's not the kind of stereotypical military guy. He's kind of like softly spoken and kind of gentle and sensitive, but he gets stuff done. He retired as official, like what would be a two-star general in the Air Force over there. And but he's also a musician. I'm a musician. I guess the reason I'm a jazz musician is because growing up listening to like Thelonious Monk and Duke Ellington around the household
Yep.
was, my earliest musical memories just about.
So what was your first live jazz show that you saw?
Ooh, I would have to say uh, John McLaughlin
Okay.
with Dominique DiPiazza and Trilok Gurtu. And
Okay.
that blew my mind. It just absolutely blew my mind. John McLaughlin, for those who don't know him, he's a guitarist, played with Miles Davis and has had he got right into Indian music with a band called Mahavishnu Orchestra. And yeah, just an absolute demon on guitar, really quite amazing.
I interviewed John at one point, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and he was amazing. I got to catch him live. And plus, I'm from the hometown. I'm in Kansas City. I'm in a suburb called Lee Summit, so it's the hometown of Pat Metheny. So there's
Oh,
definitely
wow.
a guitar-rich vibe going on. But I remember John telling me this intense story about this tape. Miles Davis always had like a boombox. Like that's how he listened to things, which was his era. But he'd get the
Yeah.
tape and slap it in, and everybody always talked about what a good listener he was. But there was something that John had made. I can't remember the details, but he gave it to Miles, and Miles listened to it and came out and said, "Brilliant!" Like complimented him, and he was
Yeah.
like, "I could just, everything could come to a close right now. I had the master that was appeased by my work." Just the exuberance of him explaining it. And it had been like 20 years ago, and he was just so ecstatic. But you could
Yeah.
feel too that bond those two had as musicians
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
contemporaries, you know?
I mean, when what comes to my head is just the power of positive reinforcement. I mean,
Exactly.
Miles could no doubt have picked faults in it, if he wanted to, but he just was yeah, it sounds like it was such a formative thing for John McLaughlin to have received that positive feedback from one of his idols. And
Yeah.
if John McLaughlin ever said that one of my tapes was brilliant,
Yeah, you
I'd,
would be like, I made it. I
I'd be
totally made
pretty
it.
stoked. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and speaking of the power of Miles, I've had one child on this planet, and his name is Miles. So it speaks
Oh,
to the
okay.
power of that music and him. But why do you love jazz? And I guess more than that, how has it lent to you helping and healing and doing what you're doing in your life right now?
Yeah, good question. Um, well, I actually studied a music degree in northern New Jersey, just across the river from Manhattan. And I remember very clearly having a very dark period where I had the headaches and the tension, and the I went and saw a concert and a workshop by a great jazz pianist. I don't know, have you ever heard of a guy called Kenny Werner?
Oh yeah, Kenny's great.
Yeah.
He's
So I
Canadian, I
went,
believe.
is he really?
I think he's from Canada, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great.
So he wrote a book called Effortless Mastery.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I really that was a great book for me at the time. And a lot of the learnings I still use every day. But to your question, I think just learning that there's so much we can do. I guess learning that muscle tension starts in the mind, like our muscles don't tense themselves. That they tense in response to signals from the brain. and that there's so much we can do that, and people don't really know about it. And I just sort of get this feeling that it's kind of a revolution waiting to happen, and I feel like I really just want to help people. It sort of sounds a bit woo-woo, but kind of use the power of their minds in a very pragmatic, kind of practical way to just stop tensing and stop hurting yourself so much. It really is that simple.
I remember one time where I used to live in another town here in Kansas City. I used to have this community garage art sale. I'm a visual artist, so I would put my paintings out in the driveway for the citywide garage sale, and people would just put whatever money they had. It wasn't mandatory. But anyways, I remember a guy came up to me at one point, and I had a big weeping willow in my front yard, and he did too. And we just kind of
Yeah.
started talking about the willow, but he kind of saddled up and it got serious for a minute. And he said, "You know what? I had this friend that had cancer." And he was talking about the power of positive thinking, the,
Yeah.
the the way that you can rechannel your biology to believe
Yeah.
something that isn't happening. And he was explaining how this person that had a very serious stage 4 found a way mentally to dig out of it. And he wasn't
Yeah.
saying that, that's the 100% thing for everybody, but he was talking about the power of the mind to go up against something that's malicious like that. And I'll never forget that. And it's like what you're saying. There's a level of us that I believe get limited by things that we see around us. But if we just
Yeah.
see this expansive universe of anything's possible, it's just
Yeah.
so beneficial.
Yeah, and it's just like I kind of think, I guess I'm an engineer, right? I'm a pretty practical guy. I think about tools. I think about mental tools. Just as learn to use tools like a knife and fork, there's things available to us just with thought, whether it's positive thinking, whether it's thinking, I'm just going to release a bit of tension, whether it's, being intentional about relationships, like with my kids, I'm going to say positive things to them like 6 times a day. There's just all of this choice that we have about our lives that we get to use. And I guess I'm always a little skeptical of sounding like kind of new agey or whatever, but it really is pretty practical stuff, and it's something that you can do pretty easily. So, and it can make a big difference.
I would imagine that volley with you being an engineer and then being a musician and helping people with back pain. I mean, you got a real right and left brain gig going on.
Yeah.
How do you balance those out? How do they feed into each other?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like I've had a lifelong journey in that. It's a really interesting question, Joe.
Yeah.
Um, growing up, I was extremely kind of left brain dominant. For those who may not be so familiar with the difference, left brain is kind of like analytical, rational, and right brain is more creative. And I mean, look at that beautiful painting behind you. I mean, organizing a podcast and being a painter, it's like you've got both going on as well.
Right. Yes.
Um, and so yeah, I was very, I remember saying to my friend, she was said, with music that I must be very, very right brain as well. And I was like, well, I'm not sure. I feel like it's my left brain running right brain simulations. But over the years, and it's been a big part of, coming to, releasing tension, developing my musical passion, getting in touch with the right brain. So to the extent that I've achieved a balance, I think it's been kind of just an awareness of needing of a hunger for that kind of creativity, for that musical expression. It's what I think it's what drove me from doing a math degree and an engineering double degree, and then working in IT to save up money to go to music school, and learn jazz from like Rufus Reed, and some of the heavies over there. I had this hunger and this passion to kind of, I guess, achieve balance, to just explore that creative side. And I wouldn't say I'm the most creative person on in the world, but certainly it's been something that I've wanted to explore and wanted to keep making part of my life.
Right. I interviewed Rufus, I think about a year or two ago. I've interviewed him a few
Okay.
times, but he had some memories of Kansas City and was telling me a story about how a major player, I can't remember his name, told him, "You got to go to New York. You got
Yeah.
and just the thing that gets me the most about Rufus is he is a legend. He is a prolific force of the bass and of music, but he's
Yeah.
so grounded. I think sometimes
Yeah.
he's stunted by the fact that the outside world considers him an NEA jazz master and a legend. But he
Yeah.
is. I mean, he's an indomitable force in the music.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
talk about someone who's in touch with the creative.
Yeah.
Um, I remember having one lesson with Rufus where, he just had me play one note, a one note sort of pulse, and I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable and a little intimidated. And he went to the piano. Am I doing this right? Is this jazz? I don't know. Like I feel like this white guy from Australia, and I've come all this way, and he had you book a 5 hour lesson, and I'd catch the subway up to the GW Bridge, and he'd come and pick me up in his car, take me back to, I think he lives in Teaneck, New Jersey, or somewhere like that, Hackensack. Um, and uh, and I was in his studio, and I was playing this one note and feeling really quite uncomfortable, and he goes to the piano, and he just looks at me and just plays this chord, and I just felt like, whoom, all of a sudden. It's like the air was moving, like the everything was kind of pulsing, and I was just like, oh, I'd never felt anything like it. And
That's wild.
and
I
he lived in that space.
Yeah. It's interesting you saying that. I've taken on a lot of difficult things in life between writing and
Mm.
podcasting and painting. I'm an IT guy by day. I
Oh,
want
really?
music to be this visceral thing. I
Yeah,
just don't want to know how to read it. I just want to feel it in a very visceral
yeah,
way. And I
yeah,
think what you're talking about, which is interesting with the one note, it's about breathing. Like
yeah,
like that's the beauty of like Peace Piece by Bill Evans. It just
yeah,
breathes.
yeah,
It's harmonically and technically beautiful, but it
yeah,
breathes and he has that
yeah.
timing to do it. And someone like
Oh,
Rufus,
oh,
being a rhythm
oh,
master, he can just
yeah,
make the room breathe in a way that
yeah.
you don't get until he shows you.
Oh man, yeah, that is so true. It's so true. It's so true. I remember um, when I first moved to the New York area, sitting in a place called the Internet Cafe, listening to George Garzone on tenor and Mark Elias on bass.
Wow.
George Schuler, I think, was on drums. There was another tenor player there. It might have been Tony Malaby. And I was sitting on the floor, like right at the front, and they just started playing, and I just felt like,
Yeah.
it was just like everybody's ears were like this big, and yeah, the breath, the kind of the movement in the room was quite amazing to me. And but yeah, Rufus is one of he's kind of the mother superior of that, for me anyway,
Yeah.
in terms of the people that I've had kind of close contact with. Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
And Garzone, I just can't believe how many people he's taught. I mean,
Mm.
he's a performer and a recorder, but man, the amount of students, he always kind of reminds me of being a little bit like the Maynard Ferguson of the saxophone because he can nail that thing in a very specific, powerful way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a master of his craft. He really. And I'd never even heard of him. I just kind of went there, and that's so much of when I first moved to New York was like that. I would just go to Smalls, and I was like, yeah, like I'll check it out, and I would just like my hair would be completely blown back by these people who I'd never heard of, and it was kind of humbling. It was extremely humbling. It wasn't kind of humbling. It was for me at the time, it was almost crushing to to just be exposed to that level of talent in that music. And but it kind of set me free in a way because I realized that by my own standards I was never going to really amount to a hill of beans in the compared with the mastery of the people and the generations before, and the people who I saw who were like, in some instances my age or younger. I went and saw this show at Smalls with a bass player called Omer Abatal,
Uh-huh.
and I just was like, I kind of walked out of that gig with this kind of curious mix of elation and despair. But what I came to realize is that, it doesn't matter, like we're all just trying to find that breath. And you can find that at any level of kind of how hard you've practiced or how good you are,
Yep.
that's available. Like, and that's really the game. That's really for me anyway, uh that's the really that's where the meaning is. That's where the soul is. And I don't really have to be some technical genius to find that and share that and communicate that with the people in the room. And that's really what I kind of value and what in my better moments I think I kind of find.
It's interesting how we kind of have detoured from your story into this jazz, which is good,
Oh, no,
but
it's fine. It's
but but
good.
it, but it's a complete metaphor for what you're going through with your career with these different incarnations. Because it's like what Miles said at one point. It took him decades to find his voice. And you're
Mhm.
thinking you're Miles Davis. You're the guy that made Kinda Blue, the largest selling album, along with every other thing you've touched, and the legions of musicians that you've brought under your wing, like Herbie and everybody else.
Yeah,
How can
yeah,
you say it took you that long?
the
But that's the part of the human condition, and being
yeah,
in the arts, I realize sometimes you just have to be on the planet long enough to take it
yeah,
all in, right? And then
yeah,
better through it. And for you, figuring out and going back to that pain that you had to alleviate that for others, it's the ultimate version of altruism. Plus, you're genuinely helping people and furthering a science.
yeah. Well, and I think to your point about, it's just how long you're doing it for, like how long you've been around. I think, you know, every day is a new opportunity without getting too metaphysical, but just to peel back the onion of our own, the way we limit ourselves and the what we get stuck in,
Yep.
and to just find the new and to develop our own craft, our own practice, our own and deepen. And that you do that for, years, for decades, and you find that you have something you can share with people,
Yeah.
and you can help people because everyone does that in their own ways, but we all do it in different ways.
Yeah.
So when you have a way that you've kind of cultivated, then you have that to share.
So you have this very interesting career arc that's gone from engineering to IT to music and helping people with back pain now. And I'm curious, between America and Australia, when you look at everything that you've done, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Ooh. Well, I mean, two things spring to mind. One is when I gave up my IT job first of all, I moved to the US, and then I gave up my IT job. I was working, I was running IT. I was the IT manager for the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
And I gave up that, and I went to, William Patterson University in New Jersey, and as a full fee paying international student, which was, you know, I'd saved up all this money and there wasn't going to be much left by the time I finished.
Yeah.
Um, but it didn't really seem like a risk at the time. I mean, it just seemed like it was the reason I moved to the States in the first place. I just was like, I have to follow this, I have to find this music.
Yep.
And I guess the second thing that comes to mind is what I'm doing now. I've been pretty successful in IT, not next to the Titans, your Bill Gateses and your, Jeff Bezos and those people. But I've enjoyed um, some fulfilling work. I've helped a bunch of people, and that's kind of, I wouldn't say that's easy, but I would say that that's comfortable. So just branching out from that and saying, no, I'm going to just like, again, depart from the left brain kind of pursuit and just go for a more right brain thing. I mean, obviously, when you work in the arts, if you're going to get it out there, you've got to use your left brain, and there's a time for just sitting down with the laptop and deciding you're going to make something happen in the world. And that's a very different skill set from being an artist.
Yeah.
And some people are more, some amazing art, like Van Gogh springs to mind, who did not have that at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but a visionary, just this incredible creative force. So Yeah, so I guess what I'm doing now is a departure, but it's really exciting, and it's I ran a a course late last year, and I had 10 people graduate the course, and they on average they started with 24 days of pain per month of back pain, and they after 8 weeks they finished with 4 days of
Wow.
a month of back pain, and one guy in particular, one guy in particular, he said his neck pain, which he'd had for 30 years, from scoliosis, was he said he could feel the knots disappearing in his neck
Wow.
after half an hour, and it was a few weeks uh, into the course, it was like the pain was gone, all of it,
Wow.
after 30 years of daily pain. And so, you know, to your question about risk, um, I feel like if I can just help people like that, then, you know, uh, it'll be worth it. And I'm sure good things will happen.
That's almost a water to wine moment. That's almost miraculous to have that level of healing, right? I
I
mean,
know,
crazy.
I know. And I going into the course, I I didn't know. Like I didn't know if it would really work.
Yeah.
The format that so Alexander Technique's been around for quite a while, and there's a bunch of teachers, and I studied with a master teacher and got qualified and so on. And then there's these sort of like it's the medical profession. A lot of doctors know about it. There's been some really good studies that have shown it to be effective. But this way of teaching over the internet, where I have coursework that people do, that I record videos, and then they come to these group, what I call mastery sessions. Um, I'm not aware of anyone else using that format. So I was just like, oh, well, let's just, it really came about because I teach Alexander Technique privately, one-on-one in person. And I found that I was just saying the same stuff to people in every new student that came in. I would say the same thing to them, to give them the background knowledge. Um, stuff like the, muscle tension, if you're feeling your back's really tight, that's coming from your brain, not from your back.
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do is just record a lot of these things ahead of time. So I didn't have to, waste the students' time and their money. And then I could really think about it, and I could come up with a really kind of what I hope was a really kind of easy way of explaining it consistently
Yeah.
and recording this so people love the videos. They're only like 10 minutes long, and um, you learn all this stuff, and then you come into the group mastery sessions really like what it's about, and you're ready to do the work. And it's like I suppose I aspire to the sort of experience that I've had with great teachers like Rufus, where you come to a session and it's just like, oh, something changes for you.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of that's the way I'm approaching it now, and I guess I was that story, that guy Gavin, who had that transformation. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just incredible to me. Not everyone has that experience, but a lot of people do. And I should say that that again, I should emphasize that your doctor's really the first place to go for this
Yeah.
stuff. But my doctor refers people to me. For back neck headache problems. And what I do is kind of complementary to the Western medical thing, and it's not a replacement. But for a lot of the conditions that we struggle with as a society, back pain being one, it's certainly, often very helpful.
Yeah. So of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved into at this point, what are you the proudest of?
Ooh. Well, I suppose if I restrict the answer to the career, like, I mean, like the first thing that comes to mind is, marrying my wife and
Yeah.
having these beautiful kids.
Yeah.
But I guess if I talk about career, I was pretty proud of, I got an award at university called the University Medal, which is given to, I think at the time, Australian National University had about 6,000 students, and they give away like 20 every year. So um, I was pretty good engineer, or at least I was a pretty good engineering student. Um, so that remains, I guess, something that stays with me. But I think some of the experiences I've had performing in New York, I think I mentioned in a message to you, um, playing with Fuku Tanaka
Yeah.
in New York was great. He's a really great Japanese drummer.
Yeah.
Played with Lou Donaldson and George Benson, and uh, really nice guy. He kind of took me under his wing. Um, I appeared on a show with Wynton Marsalis. That was pretty great.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess just helping people, with this Alexander technique. I'm that there have just been some moments where I've just, it sounds every time, just about every time I'm like, damn, this stuff actually works.
Yeah.
I should have a little more faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I see someone has a change like that, and I should say that this guy Gavin isn't the only one. There have been other people who just completely back pain's just gone away,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I didn't invent this stuff. I can't really claim credit for it. It was a guy called FM Alexander and it's been passed down and refined through generations of teachers. But it's an honor to be working in this way and helping people.
So we get off the call here. Time machine pulls up. You can go anywhere in the history of jazz and see one live performance. Where are you going to go?
Ah,
Ah. Or you can do a
oh,
couple. I can see that
uh,
painful to just do one.
oh, okay. Look, I think, Miles, uh, the first quartet.
With
Uh,
Coltrane.
yeah,
I thought.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The
Coltrane,
first
Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Philly Joe.
the lineup for Kind of Blue.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Plus Cannonball Adderley.
Yeah.
And if I could
Cannonball.
fit him in, yeah, if they were appearing live as a sextet, that's where I would set the dial on the time machine. I've been transcribing this solo by Cannonball recently on I Got Rhythm off a Paul Chambers album, and it's just startling. It's like bebop language, yeah, sure, like a lot of cliches, but the way he puts it together is just so fresh. And so I play double bass, and I've been learning this solo on double bass, but obviously it's like 300 beats a minute. It's just breakneck speed, but I play it like really super slow as a meditation. Like playing long tones, and I would love to see that band. I think Bill Evans trio, that the famous one, Sunday at the Village Vanguard with Scott
Yeah.
LaFaro and
Scott
Paul Motion.
LaFaro. Right
Yeah,
before he died. Yeah.
yeah. I would love to see that. I'd love to see
So
that.
so this is what you have to do. I reviewed this book and interviewed the author about a year ago. It's Three Shades of Blue, and it's the recording session of Kind of Blue, but it breaks down the careers of Miles, Coltrane, and Bill Evans and intertwines them to show kind of a deeper story. It's James Kaplan. Pick it up. You're going to love it. And
Wow.
based on where you want to go, you're going to get
Yeah.
into the time machine when you read this book. So you should pick it up.
Yeah. Wow. I would
Yeah.
love that. I remember enjoying Miles's autobiography when
Yeah.
I read that in I guess the mid 90s. But yeah, I'm trying to think who else I would love to see. I mean, McCoy,
Yeah.
my goodness. My goodness, what a ferocious player. Um,
Somebody told me they were on tour with him in Italy, and he was so excited to get gelato and was explaining to me about how he was eating gelato. It's just like there was one time I was interviewing John Coltrane's daughter Michelle,
oh
and they had
wow.
just moved to LA. They were somewhere on the West Coast, and she said she saw Sarah Vaughan riding a bike and could never get the image out of her head, and neither can I now. Like I'm just imagining Sarah Vaughan, this legendary voice, just riding a bike, taking in the ocean breeze. It's just it's crazy, the vignette story that happens, you know.
That reminds me of that big of that Kenny Werner workshop that I mentioned. He had
Yeah.
this sort of Dunkin' Donuts cup, like a coffee cup. And I remember him like he put it on the piano and then he like went and picked it up and went, The logo there.
That's awesome. That's
Sort of
totally cool.
goofing around.
So, if anyone out there, I want to make sure that I get this in before because time's running down here. If anyone wants to reach out, they have any questions, they're curious about anything and everything from your career, where do they go?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my site is www.smartbackrecovery.com. Um, and that actually may change, but you'll find me if you
Okay.
go there. www.smartbackrecovery. I have like a little um, back pain quiz that
Okay.
can help you sort of. It's not a medical diagnosis, but it's just something that can help you have a bit of a think
Yeah.
about where you're at if you have back pain, where you have and what your options might be.
Okay.
So again, seek medical advice, but if you want to go to that site and have a bit of a play around with that quiz, it can, people can find that really helpful to, get a new perspective on where they're at.
Yeah, totally. I'll put it in the show notes. Ben, what a great surprise. This has been wonderful. I'm glad that we got to delve into the jazz. We got to get into your world. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,